Restored Marriage Testimony. I saw him looking at me with a silly, passionate look. Eunice, how did your restoration journey actually begin? Well, the story is a little long. My husband and I met in our teens, and I soon fell in love with him, and he then started showing interest in me, and we started dating. In the following years, we became engaged and got married. We were always very good friends and enjoyed being with each other, which made our situation very difficult when we were separated. It was just years ago when my husband and I were fighting a lot. I was like many of the women who are disgustingly contentious, and everything had to be my way. Then one day I saw my husband crying, and when I asked him what happened, thinking someone had died or something, he told me that there was another woman and that he was going to leave me. I couldn't believe it. Never in a million years would I ever believe that he would do that. I tried to get help from my parents, who came to talk to us, get help from our favorite pastor of our church. I tried to talk with my husband, but none of that helped. He left home, taking all his things with him. I didn't know about RMI, but I always believed in God and His Word, although I didn't read it often and had no clue about any principles for marriage or wives. But in my heart I knew that He had a purpose in all this, and that He didn't want my marriage to be destroyed. So I soon had a peace in my heart, and I started to seek Him and believe in what He could do. I started to follow some principles that I already knew. A friend had a restored marriage, so I know that you had to be meek and kind whenever I had the opportunity to talk to my husband, to be sweet with every word spoken, and to not judge him for anything that had happened. God was giving me wisdom and grace to endure everything. Then my husband started to approach me again. There was one time that he even called me crying, saying that he missed me, but that he didn't know how to get out of his mess, and if he came back, if we would be successful. That he had complicated his whole life, and it was hopeless. Then, on the internet, I found the book How God Can and Will Restore Your Marriage, and I started to read it. In less than a week, I had read the whole book 3 times and started to practice everything I had learned. So I made a vow with the Lord, and every day for 7 days I would get up at dawn to pray for my husband, not for our marriage, but for his salvation, and for God to deliver him as He had told me was how He felt. And then, exactly on the last day of my prayer, my husband returned home. After almost 2 months away from home, he returned broken but happy, saying that he loved me and wanted to live with me forever. We resumed our work in the church. We were part of the ministry of praise, and several times we gave our testimonies in the church, and so this was our first restoration. Fast forward to 3 years later, exactly in the same way as the first time, we were experiencing a crisis in our marriage. I was unemployed for almost a year, and I became contentious because I could not help my husband, and I failed to trust God. We discussed things like our time at church that occupied our time almost every weekend, which was the time we had together, since in the week he worked a lot. And then I stopped practicing everything I had learned at RMI and turned away from the Lord. Then my husband left me, and when I realized he'd moved out, I remembered everything I'd learned and everything we had been through before. I searched boxes and found the book How God Can and Will Restore Your Marriage, and I started reading it again and practicing the principles. I repented for leaving it behind and turning away from the Lord. I prayed and asked Him to take me back, And then I started to act differently. But still, with God's permission, my husband continued living elsewhere, but not with the other woman. Instead, he went to live with his mother. It was hard to see him go, but I knew the word. I knew what I'd done, and I knew that with him, there I would fail again to follow the principles. Mainly, I knew that the Lord was trying to bring me back to him. And again and finally, even with all this happening, I was able to be at peace. I began to yearn for the Lord more than ever, and finally I got to know the RMR website and all it had to offer. So I started taking the courses, and what a difference! With each lesson, I was learning more and more and being set free from myself while wanting more and more of the Lord. I was changing so much, I was amazed. My journals became love letters to him, and then I finally was able to have a relationship with him as I never had. I finally met him as my beloved, my heavenly husband, my protector and provider, and that was so wonderful, I just can't describe it. I learned to let go because he was everything I needed. It was so easy because I had so much of him. I could never have imagined my life would be so beautiful. If my husband spoke too ugly to me, I was all right. If he did not speak for weeks, I no longer suffered because I was happy to be alone with him and because I knew that he was taking care of everything and that everything was in his control. I loved getting home and lying in bed and singing new love songs to him that I'd heard on the radio. I loved talking to him, feeling his embrace and feeling that he was with me all the time. When I went to work, I got a job just before my husband left the house, and I started to work because my husband asked me, though I prayed against it. When looking at the sun rising while on the train, I could see my beloved in everything. I could see him as the center of everything in my life. I loved spending every moment with him, and I knew that he would never forsake me. He would never turn his back on me and never gave up on me. So when I was at the height of my relationship with him, my beloved, my lover, when I heard that he, as my husband, that I am his bride, and that I look forward to being able to see him and embrace him and be with him, my earthly husband started to get closer to me, to say that he loved me. But I was afraid for him to come back and make the mistakes again. I also didn't want to lose what I had with my beloved. I listened to him asking me to please get back together again, but I didn't speak much. I was in no hurry to have him home. I was even afraid to get too far from my heavenly husband and not have the quality time that we now had. But I left everything in his hands and rested, saying that I knew that if he wanted it, I would willingly allow him to restore my marriage, but that he had to promise that nothing would change between us. I wanted everything to stay the way we had it. So I prayed and said, "Your will be done." It was very crazy how so many things that I read in the courses confirmed how I was feeling, that my restoration was ripe to pick when I no longer wanted it and I only wanted him. By this time I wasn't on any social networks, and then I read the lesson talking about leaving the church, and after several confirmations, even though it seems crazy, I let my church go, and that's when everything changed. How did God change your situation, Eunice, as you sought him wholeheartedly? Showing me every day where he wanted to transform me, showing me how he wanted to approach me and to be intimate and close to him, to show him that he is all I need. Every day I came home and ran to get ready and go to our little corner of our world where I would talk to him, sing to him, feel him, and that changed me. Every day I just wanted to be better for him because he loved me, took care of me, supplied me with everything, and gave me peace that I cannot explain. What principles from God's Word or through our resources, Eunice, did the Lord teach you during this trial? There were so many I could never list them all, but the ones that helped me the most in this restoration journey were speaking kindness every time we speak, gentle and quiet spirit, letting go, letting the church go, putting the Lord always first in everything in my life, trusting only Him and His Word. What were the most difficult times that God helped you through, Eunice? When my husband left home, I saw him on social media where one of his ex-girlfriends from high school was also in, and they were laughing and hugging. It was very difficult because the enemy wanted to put several thoughts in my mind, and so I cried so much at the Lord's feet. I'm so thankful to Him for using it to lure me back to Him. It was to His ways. Without Him, I would not have succeeded. Eunice, what was the turning point of your restoration? First, when I understood to let go, I realized that letting go is not just not getting in touch and leaving Him alone, but leaving your heart free from wanting Him, and proof when you no longer want to know what is going on, how restoration will happen, or when it will happen. Letting go is not caring about time, distance, attitudes. It's resting in God and dedicating yourself and focusing on seeking Him and giving Him your whole heart and receiving everything He wants to give you, good and bad, and allowing yourself to enjoy His sweet presence and receive a love that you will never find in your life. And the only way to be truly happy, because your happiness is in Him. Tell us how it happened, Eunice. Did your husband just walk in the front door? Eunice, did you suspect or could you tell you were close to being restored? For a couple of weeks, he started visiting me, calling me, talking to me, more when I did answer. Then he started saying that he missed me, and he started talking about coming back and if I believed it could work. Then one day he met me at home and said he wanted to come back, that he felt such a peace when he was with me, that he loved me and missed me a lot, that his heart was hurting so much he couldn't stand it. He asked me to go to see a movie. We met there, and when we went inside during the entire movie, he started whispering all these loving words into my ear. I saw him looking at me with a silly, passionate look and started saying he had to come back to where he left, to where he never should have left, and said he would do anything for us. Then he thanked me for not giving up on us. That same day after the movie, we went home together, and the next day he moved his things back. He moved his things back in. Would you recommend any of our resources in particular that helped you, Eunice? Yes, the book How God Can and Will Restore Your Marriage helped me a lot. It helped me in the direction I knew I needed to go and showed me the light at the end of the tunnel. I recommend the courses. What a difference than just reading the book, which I intend to continue doing as our restoration journey does not end and should not end, and the book A Wise Woman. These materials help me so much and you have no idea, and that's why I recommend and share them with people I know and have been through the same things that I went through, and also shared with friends who are getting married. I would have loved to have all this information before you got married. Would you be interested in helping encourage other women, Eunice? Yes, and I believe that the Lord allowed this to happen to me so that I could get closer and get to know Him, and then others who are going through the same situation, and help prevent young women from making the same mistakes. Either way, Eunice, what kind of encouragement would you like to leave women with in conclusion? Well, I went through what you are going through, and I know how difficult it is. But I have good news. You don't have to suffer. There is a path of peace, a path of joy and happiness in the midst of all that suffering, dear friend. You can have peace, and this path begins by falling in love with your Maker. Dear ones, don't focus on your husband. Don't focus on your marriage. Focus on Him and His will. Desire to know Him, to want to please Him, to want to feel everything He wants to offer you. Oh, it is so wonderful, so beautiful, and such a unique experience you do not want to miss. Today, only He makes my heart race. Only He fills my eyes with tears of emotion. He is everything you need, and He allowed this to happen so that you could return to Him. He has so much to offer you, more than any man in this world could ever hope to give you. Take advantage of this time, every second of it, to be with your beloved. Really try to know Him, and you will never be the same. Enjoy every moment, because soon God will restore your marriage, and you will not have all the time you have today to be with Him. Do not give up what He said you would do. Do not give up on His promises and the testimony He has through your life and marriage. And please never forget that He is in control of everything, and that for Him nothing is impossible. I love you even without knowing you, and I wish with all my heart that you enjoy Him. And if you do, very soon you will have the blessing of a restored marriage, and you'll be writing your own testimony.